Now to hear from Blue Mountain CDAC, the Digital Ambassadors Project. We welcome Rin Lachlos. Sorry.
Hello everyone. I too would like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land, to elders past, present and future. Now the person who worked on this, a CDAC member from Mountains Youth Services Team, which is our large youth organisation, couldn't be here today, so I'm doing this presenting instead of her. If you have any questions, her email address appears at the end, so write directly to her because she'll answer them better than I can. Alright, so the Digital Ambassadors Project was led by Mountains Youth Services Team in collaboration with CDAC, which is an offshoot of YMESA, the Youth Mental Illness and Substance Abuse Network. And it took place in Term 2 2017, so over the 10 weeks of the second term with 3 weeks administration. So what its aim was to allow young people to inform us about the best way to use social media tools to reach and interact with young people living in the Blue Mountains. And this is in recognition of the fact that young people live on social media, and the best way of getting both messages across and participation from young people is to engage them with the tool that they're most comfortable with. So what we did was we recruited 12 young people in year 7 to 12. So the prerequisites were that they had to have an active presence on Facebook or similar and a high level of proficiency in social media. And to use this to increase awareness of welfare and health services for young people in the Blue Mountains. And if they weren't using these services, to find out why. Why were they not seen as relevant or accessible? So the tools needed were obviously social media advertising. The young people were given 10 weekly briefs regarding the objectives and content, and obviously because a lot of them were under 16, they needed to, or their parents needed to grant support. So that's just a précis of what I just said then. So the ambassadors were drawn from a number of high schools, not all of them, but certainly most of them, including distance education. We have, in the Blue Mountains, we have a very, very large percentage of both homeschooled kids and kids doing distance education. And the main reason for them doing distance education is not because they're doing elite sports or vocationally talented kids, but they're too anxious to be at school. And that's actually become worse since the terrible bushfires of 2013. A lot of kids subsequent to that could no longer go to school because they were at school the day of the bushfires, and it just provokes too much anxiety. So it was really important that we also drew from those kids because they formed quite a big cohort in the mountains. So they were the ambassadors. That's just a parental permission slip. And just a couple of examples of what they were asked to do each week. I'm only highlighting a couple of weeks. So week 1 was trending topics, and what we asked them to do was to create 2 different social media posts that assist young people in the Blue Mountains and that address a trending concern. And they could choose from these or any other issue that they thought was important. LGBTQI, racial equality, HSC exams, Youth Week, drug and alcohol abuse, suicide prevention or other. And they could upload anything or make it up themselves that addressed this concern in a way that was relevant to young people and would be interesting to young people. And then week 2, actually this might go through all the weeks. Look, similar thing. Talk about a service that's helped you before, or a program you've attended, a community organisation you'd like to work for one day. And then week 7, this is the one that's most relevant to today, drugs and alcohol. So what we asked them to do was, we stated it was their choice whether to use drugs or alcohol or not, but we wanted to make sure that their friends were safe, whether they chose to participate or not. And this week we asked them to create 2 different social media posts to provide information on either not using drugs and alcohol, so abstaining completely, or knowing how to stay safe if they chose to participate, and what advice or support did they want to give. So their job was to find or create posts that would be appealing to young people, whether it was an abstinence or a harm minimisation approach, and then to provide advice or support, or just engage them in conversation on that topic. They're just some examples. They're probably quite hard to see of some of the posts. And then at the conclusion of the project, they needed to ask young people to name a program or service that they didn't know about before, and which brief was the most interesting, and what did their friends respond to the most. And the survey questions were then collated. So what we learned, really important, that the most commonly discussed topics were anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, and bullying. And I would add that that actually matches what the expert knowledge in the area is saying as well. And in fact, I would probably list them in that order. I would say anxiety is right at the top. I don't know about other areas, but our anxiety amongst young people is just off the charts. It's really, really worrying. Followed by depression. Drugs and alcohol help them cope with anxiety and depression, and then of course drugs and alcohol exacerbate anxiety and depression, and bullying is a concern. So that's given us, from young people, really good information that we can then use to look at how to work better and more effectively with them, not just in formulating programs, but also in formulating a whole of community response. There were challenges. It was very difficult to accurately monitor the full interactions on each post. Some of the participants needed a fair bit of hand-holding, and there was also no real way of knowing what the full reach was, short of friending everybody, which Suzanne, who led this project, didn't want to do. She just had to rely on the feedback that was provided. And if you want any more information on this, there's her contact details. She is leaving this week, but there will be somebody there who can answer questions if you're interested in this project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rin. That's interesting, given that research that was released last week reporting on what parents saw as the greatest concern they had for their kids. And it wasn't mental health, it wasn't drugs or alcohol or other drugs, it was use of social media. So this is a really interesting project that combines those issues together. So great, interesting stuff.